Hey folks, I'm Kevin from the Canyon River Grill, and we've set out to meet some of the outstanding winemakers of the Yakima Valley, and today we're with Justin Neufeld. Justin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Justin, you're pretty much our neighbor. Where'd you grow up?
I actually grew up a few ridges over in Natchez.
I love that. A few ridges over. That's really cool. And where'd you learn how to make wine?
So I got my first job in the wine business. Actually, I had an internship over at Chateau Saint Michel in Woodinville when I was finishing up school at UW. And then left and came over. I wanted to be on this side of the mountains.
So you knew at that time, I'm going to be a winemaker.
Yeah, it was kind of an epiphany I had sitting at Green Lake with my good friend and his dad, and realized I loved Seattle, but I wanted to get back, not necessarily to my roots, but just more of a rural, quiet setting.
Sure.
And as I learned more about wine, I just fell in love with it, and I learned that wine is made not just in the winery, but also the vineyard. You'll hear that a lot, and some of the best wine grapes in the state are grown over in the Yakima Valley. So I moved back here to be more involved in not just the winemaking, but the grape growing process as well. And that was in 2004. I got a job in the lab at Silver Lake Winery. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth, and went to Walla Walla for a short bit, and then in 2007 came back to Gilbert Cellars in Yakima, and that's where I've been since. So, and then started my label in 2008, working out there at the Gilbert facility.
So I noticed that you make Cabernet, and I love that. I love that you focus on Cabernet. Tell us about your winemaking philosophy.
Yeah, so a lot of people think it's silly that I just make Cabernet Sauvignon. I have when I come out with a new release, it's like 4 Cabernets, and people ask you, well, what else do you have? And you're like, just Cabernet. So it's kind of limiting in some ways, like if I had a rosé, I'm sure it would sell great. But the reason I wanted to focus on one variety, and Cabernet, I'll talk a little bit more about why that variety, but I wanted to focus on one variety because having worked with other varieties, Merlot and Syrah and Malbec, each variety has its strengths and weaknesses. And when it comes time to build a blend for the wine, you kind of look to the strengths and weaknesses of the varieties and what you can blend in to maybe make it a more balanced and more interesting wine. And what I really wanted to understand about the Yakima Valley was our terroir. So this sort of site specificity of what we have in our valley for growing wine grapes. And so by focusing on one variety, it made me be forced to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the sites, of the different vineyards that we have throughout the valley, and then blending those sites to make what I think is a more balanced, interesting Cabernet. So that's why I chose one variety. Cabernet Sauvignon was my choice, just because I feel like as one variety, as a single variety wine goes, it just, in my opinion, makes the most all-around, interesting, age-worthy wine. They're the wines I enjoy the most.
Plus, Yakima Valley makes outstanding wines.
Yeah. I mean,
it does Cabernet really well.
Yeah, Yakima doesn't. I mean, I'll say it never gets the cred that it deserves, but as a wine grape growing region, I mean, some of the best wines in the state are made from fruit from our valley. They're made by wineries outside of the Yakima Valley, but they're all sourcing fruit from the Yakima Valley. And I think a lot of people forget that. So,
I love the philosophy. I mean, it leads you to a deeper understanding of one specific varietal, but the varietal is very deep. It's very deep and it's very expressive of terroir, I would say. I applaud you for that, and glad to have you, and thank you for your wonderful wines.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Justin Neufeld, folks.